Cornelius, age 8.
A discovery brings strangers together.
Seeing those names, it humanized it for me.
Every time I say I'm the 5th generation of Zeke Quarterman, an enslaved man, part of me dies.
On a journey across the years.
Field article number 15, 40 acres, a mule, and $200. Abraham Lincoln is assassinated. The enslaved got nothing.
Congress passes the Homestead Act, Social Security, the GI Bill, the FHA.
Now, when we come to Washington, we're coming to get our check.
Mom, I love you. I can't breathe.
Connected by a common cause.
Harm happens locally, so repair has to happen locally. Do the work. Look at your own history. What was your family's role?
Seeking justice and peace. The Cost of Inheritance, a special edition of America Reframed.
Hi, my name is Antar Keefe, the Global Reparations Task Force Chair and lead organizer for a gathering, Peace to our members around the world, and I wish a reflective and action-oriented Black History Month to you all. The DA Reparations Task Force, along with our co-sponsors in the Global Black Caucus, Progressive Caucus, and DA China, are delighted to not only have provided this film, but have 3 guests who have worked on the film join us. However, before we have our Q&A led by the Global Black Caucus founding chair, Angela Fobbs, we'd like to acknowledge gross human rights violations, massacres, and genocides, not just against Black Americans, but other Americans too. Today provides us an opportunity to commemorate the humanity of those harmed. Today, in fact, marks the 82nd anniversary of the infamous World War II era order to send all people of Japanese descent on US soil to concentration camps. Many of these descendants of those victims live with past and present trauma and pain. And we would be remiss not to honor their pain and sacrifice today. Here with us is Grace Shimizu, the director of the Japanese-Peruvian Oral History Project and coordinator of the Campaign for Justice, Redress Now for Japanese Latin Americans. We really appreciate Grace's fierce and tireless solidarity in the struggle for Black reparations and liberation. And we're happy to stand with you today and every day, Grace. Grace, would you like to share a few words before we proceed?
Yes, I would. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me and making time to acknowledge the significance of this Day of Remembrance on February 19th and to express our solidarity with the Black reparations movement and the people of African descent in the US and around the world. I'm joining you from the traditional territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded or stolen land of the Shoshone Ohlone people, also known as Oakland, California, United States of America. I am a Japanese American whose grandfather and relatives on both my parents' side were incarcerated during World War II in 4 of the 10 US concentration camps run by the War Relocation Authority. I have also family members who were interned in 2 of over 60 concentration camps and detention centers run by the Department of Justice and US Army, which imprisoned over 31,000 immigrant residents and citizens of Japanese, German, Italian, and Jewish ancestry in the US and those taken from 18 Latin American countries. My father and other relatives were among the over 2,200 men, women, and children kidnapped from 13 Latin American countries. We Japanese Latin American internees and our family have an ongoing redress and reparations struggle, now over 3/4 of a century long, part of the unfinished World War II business and legacy of the Japanese American community and this nation. So I invite you to please check out the links on the chat when I can get them up for you for more information on this wartime treatment and our justice struggles, not only for the people of Japanese ancestry, but also other so-called potentially dangerous enemy aliens during World War II and today. So February 19, 1942 was a day when President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, authorizing ethnic cleansing, mass exclusion and incarceration, and setting in motion the traumatic events that the Japanese American community is still uncovering and recovering from through our generations. EO 9066 was birthed from the Alien Enemy Act of 1918, which justified and led to the apprehension and internment of so-called potentially dangerous enemy aliens of Japanese, German, Italian ancestry in the US and those taken from Latin America. This law is still on the books and is a loaded gun waiting around and was actually used 4 years ago by then President Trump with the Muslim ban, blocking immigration and travel on the basis of so-called national security. For the Japanese American community in the US, Day of Remembrance is a heartfelt tradition and anchoring community institution. It is one time in each year when we come together as a community across the nation. We affirm our community's wartime experience, share our memories, and remember our loved ones. It is also a time when we reassert the call for action and recommit ourselves to activism in ongoing struggles for truth, justice, government accountability, and for redress and reparations. At many 2024 Day of Remembrance events, the call for solidarity with the Black reparations struggle continues with education, dialogue, and action. We appreciate today's event, which helps us deepen our understanding for our common fight against racism, nativism, white supremacy, and rising right-wing authoritarianism and fascism in the United States and around the world. And it also helps us to deepen our resolve to work together to envision and build the future which we all need, want, and deserve. And we also amplify the call of the Palestinian people in Palestine, in the US, and in their diaspora for immediate and permanent ceasefire and the end to intensifying genocide and ethnic cleansing. We know what it means to face silence and see backs turned against us. We know the realities of racism, purposeful reaction, and hysteria in times of war and crisis, and the failure of leadership of our elected officials and social institutions. We join humanity across the world calling for solidarity with the Palestinian people. We also stand in solidarity with many in the US as we confront that failure of political leadership. And this includes engagement with our elected officials on the major issues of the day, including the call for Black reparations. So we stand in solidarity with all in the US and our citizens living in other countries to navigate the upcoming elections and to defend our nation against the existential threat to our democracy. So thank you for your kind consideration for this day of remembrance.
Thank you so much, Grace. Powerfully said. Thank you. All right, Angela, back to you now.
All right, just 1 second. All right, so thank you, Grace, for that wonderful and meaningful statement. I hadn't realized that it was the 82nd anniversary of this tragedy. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce our other guest shortly. And if you have a question, please just type star hand up in the chat. But before I introduce our guest, I want to just remind everyone, just as Grace said, that voting this year is extremely important. And if you're overseas and you haven't requested your absentee ballot, you can go ahead and do so. I'm going to put the link in the chat to request an absentee ballot because we can't let the fascist win. That wouldn't be good for any of us. So I'd like to start with our first guest, Lottie Lee Abdullah. Lottie is, after discovering that she was in the actual film, after discovering she was a descendant of slaveholders, Lottie Liebdula, a retired financial strategist, co-founded the reparationsforslavery.com portal for white families wishing to walk the path of racial healing through engaging in direct repair. Lottie is also the founding donor of Reparations Circle Denver. Welcome, Lottie. I'd like to also introduce our next guest, another person in the film, Briayna Cuffie. Briayna Cuffie is a strategist, advocate, and author based in Annapolis, Maryland. She leverages her political expertise, teachings from her elders, and history to help others understand the complexity of Blackness in the United States. Briayna is the co-founder and racial equity advisor for Reparations for Slavery. Welcome, Briayna. And our final guest, last but definitely not least, is Yoruba Richen. And Yoruba Richen is a documentary filmmaker and is the director of The Cost of Inheritance, a film about the movement for reparations. Yoruba's previous film, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, which I would highly advise people to see if you can see it, premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and won a Peabody Award and a Gracie Award. She is the co-director of the Peabody-nominated American Reckoning, and her film, The Killing of Breonna Taylor, won an NAACP Image Award. Yoruba is the founding director of the documentary program at the Craig Newman Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. Let me just add you 1 second, please. Sorry. So, as I said, thank you all for joining us today. That was a wonderful documentary. And my first question is actually for Yoruba. As a filmmaker and a Black woman, why was it important for you to make this film?
Hi, it's great to be with everybody today. Thank you for watching and having me. And thank you for your words, Grace, about this anniversary that we are viewing the film. And of course, we talk a little bit in the film about the fight for reparations that Japanese descendants of Japanese internment victims fought for and received as a model for us, even though, of course, it was not enough. But anyway, I am so honored that I got to make this film and explore this issue. It was a film that came to me from the producer, Darryl Ford Williams, who was approached by a consortium of universities, the Center for, calling themselves Just Futures, the Center for Social Solutions. And they had been given a grant to study reparations. And within that grant, a multi-year grant, and within that was a money for a documentary film. And then Darryl connected with me. And, you know, as soon as she told me what the topic was, I knew it was a film that was urgent to make. I mean, really what has struck me in the last bunch of years is how the conversation around the issue has moved front and center. I remember, you know, growing up, you know, in the not that long ago, in the 80s, and, you know, talk about reparations, you were considered, you know, it was considered a fringe idea, it was considered a radical. And now, you know, as we see in the film and as we see every day, the push and discussion for reparations from states signing, you know, commissions to look at it, the work that folks like Lottie and Briayna are doing, and many others, there was many others that we actually couldn't include in the film, has become, you know, this issue is front and center in our country and really around the world. So that's why I wanted to make this film. That's why I wanted to be a part of this conversation.
Wow. We have another question for you, Yoruba. Antar, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Yoruba. Thank you so much for this film. And thank you so much again to Lottie and Briayna for participating and being very key figures in this film. Yoruba, my question is for you. Now, I remember when I first got involved in this advocacy, I thought I knew a lot. And indeed, I was surprised numerous times. And I'm still learning and still getting surprised, still having mind blowers almost every month. Yoruba, what was the most surprising thing that you encountered, that you experienced in your journey to build this documentary, this project?
Yes, thank you for that question. Well, two things. The first I'm going to say shows you how our lacking of history and education we are in this country about slavery. I mean, I didn't really understand before I made this film what 40 Acres was about. That history of General Sherman, asking the Black ministers what they wanted, and they said land, and that was how the concept, the law of or the policy of 40 acres came about. And of course, it was rescinded after Lincoln was killed. I didn't really know that. And I have to say, I had access to the best education, some of the best education in this country. So that's shocking to me, that we don't really know that history, that so many of us. The other thing that came, and these are all very early on, that came as a real surprise to me, is how much is going on around this issue, how many initiatives between people are happening. And what it ended up doing for me as a filmmaker is not only wanting to document those, but also show that the possibility that this is something that could happen, and that it's hopeful, and that it's a hopeful thing. So those are the two shockers for me that happened very early on in making this film. I also didn't know that Catholic Church was one of the largest slave owning institutions in the country.
Yes, they were. And in fact, the Catholic Church is one of the reasons why Africans were enslaved. In, I think it's 1452, they wrote one of their little documents that said it was okay to enslave African people. So yeah, they owe a lot. Yeah. And they shouldn't be let off the hook. Again, if anybody has a question, Carrie, you have a question.
Hey, once again, I want to echo and everyone's comments regarding thank you for this film. It was excellent. And also I want to continue along the lines of, I had no idea either, like how much you don't know. So I want to echo that. So my question is, a gentleman was going through, I've heard about the GI Bill, how that was like the biggest determining, or one of the biggest determining factors in the difference between Black net worth and white net worth. They were, I guess, trading around the same line until the GI Bill, and that's where you can see a really big jump. My question, this is a lazy question to address the issue of not knowledge. Does anyone, even whether you guys or the group, know of a book? I feel like you have to read so many different books and try to put things together, and I just don't really know. I don't have the capacity for that. So like the Homestead Act, the GI Bill, the Black Farmers Act, and all those different acts, is there, like, sorry to sound lazy, but is there one place you can go and see like the economic costs, like not just the terror and the lynchings, but what are the economic costs to, I think about the terror, the war on terror, like, the bombing of the Twin Towers. They said it only cost like $1 million, but like its effect was like trillions felt around the world, and how just that one terrorist act. So I can imagine what it did to other people. So is there anyone that has like any sort of like, this is like the economics in the US, and this is the effect on Black people? Does anyone have anything like a book or two that I could read that summarizes this type of information?
We do.
Go ahead. Okay. Oh, you do? Nice.
Yes, we do. Briayna and I have created, that's one of the reasons why we are featured in the film is because we have a portal called Reparations Force, the number 4, slavery.com. And
you somebody type it in?
I'll add it to the chat. Go ahead.
Okay.
And so, yes, you can go on the site and you can learn about every aspect about the racial wealth gap from A to Z, including the GI Bill, including all the things you saw in the film and far more. Also, I want to say that WGBH and all of the partners have put together a fantastic discussion guide that will help you bring this film to your communities. And Briayna and I have put together, drum roll please, we just finished it this week, an online education program where we go through every single topic that is raised in the film, so you can go do a deep dive into this history.
Oh, okay, nice.
So those things are suitable for racial justice groups, any kind of group, to watch the film and then study over. It's a 15-module study guide with every topic that's explored in the film. You get a deep dive into it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that, Antar, I can go ahead and send that out to your group if you'd like afterwards. But anyway, Reparations, the number 4, slavery.com. That is exactly what we built the portal for. Bree, do you want anything to add?
No, I was just going to say the same thing. Like, that is basically the point of it, to really consolidate and concentrate that information all in one place. So that same kind of, I don't know that I would call it laziness. If that's the case, we're lazy too, where it's like, we don't for this all the time. We just want it all here, and we can just click links and drop down menus and stuff. So I was pretty much just gonna say the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
I added a couple of other titles in the chat as well.
Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I see. The Color of Law. Oh my God, one of the best books ever, or best/worst books ever, because it just shows the mechanics of how all this works.
Right.
So Bree and I also have a lecture, and you see part of the lecture in the film, but the lecture does a really good job of showing exactly how white people benefit from this history and how black people are held back. So Bree and I, and nobody argues with our lecture, because Bree and I are telling our family stories. How can you argue with somebody's family story? So, and that's actually part of the beauty about the film and how it's being received across the country. And I'd like to hear more of what you're hearing, but we are getting nothing but love in response to this film, including by so many white families across the country are saying, oh my God, not only do I have a better understanding of this history, I can see how the suppression has worked. I can see that reparations are due, and I want to do something. And people are writing to us explaining all of the creative ideas they're having based on their own history. So we recommend reparative genealogy as a way of bringing Black and white people together to look at family history, to look at national history, and to work toward repair. And people are doing that, and they're writing to us about it. So that's been some of the great responses we're getting. Yoruba, what else are you hearing?
I just want to say quickly, and I know there are other questions, that one of great response we just got at a screening in Boston that we did, where a white woman came up to Sarah Eisner, the other story we tell in the film, and said that she inherited a house that she used to play in. She inherited a house from her family, and she used to play in it as a kid. And there were slave pens in the house, and that she never investigated what that meant, what that was, what her family, her family history with slavery was. And now she is motivated. She said, I have some work to do. So those kinds of things are also happening, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Our next question is from Adrian. Adrian? Adrian, can you hear me?
Maybe on mute.
Her mic is on, but I don't hear nothing.
Yeah, I don't hear you. We're going to come right back to you, Adrian. Our next question is from Mohammed. Mohammed, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, first let me say that was an amazing documentary, right? I always try to learn more about this Sorry. We just have power outage here in Nairobi, but okay.
No worries.
But that was an amazing documentary. But my question is mainly right to Yoruba, and anybody can chime in. What is the interest, or are you seeing any interest, especially that's coming out from the young people, or right, especially college students? I know, right, the Georgetown 272 movement and how that has changed. Is there interest, and are you seeing many right movements being started and led and right by young people, and how are they contributing to this, right, I think very honorable movement?
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen, and it's not something that I've, that we focused on necessarily in the film, though we did, have a great conversation with those Spelman students. I think that young people are really engaged with this issue. And I think even what you saw at Georgetown, when when they went public with the sale, and then the student body actually voted to, I think they had a student body vote to give reparations to the descendants. It was a non-binding vote, but it passed, it totally passed. And I think that, again, how we older people and old people older than me have talked about and understood it, the young people, I keep saying young people aren't playing. They are, this is something that I think that they are, very engaged with.
I would add, Briayna and I have been very lucky to be invited into places like Harvard Divinity School, where students are learning about trying to enter the religious path and field, and finding out how broken our faith traditions are. And so speaking to these young students who are our future leaders of our faith communities, and talking about reparations and having them go through long and intense discourse about the nature of repair, just gives me tremendous hope. And they have they'll be screening the film just through their reparations course in a few weeks, and I'm very excited about that. But they're now well prepared to view the film, because they it's every, I think, twice a year that course is offered now.
Okay, our next question is from Adrienne. Her sound and volume is fixed.
I hope so. And thanks for giving me another opportunity. First of all, this is much CTV, that I blown away. Well done, absolutely. Questions for Briayna and Lottie. You can decide who goes first. I want to know, Briayna, what are you doing now? We touched on the film. I know you're doing the lecture and you've got the website, but you said the impact you're making in your community, and now your community speaks for you. What you're doing, what is that like? And what are they saying? Like, what if you were a fly on the wall? What are your community saying about you? And Lottie, when you were doing this, did you get any pushback from your family when you were doing this research? Any pushback from the community? Because when people are talking about giving wealth away, people are like, what? So thanks for your courage, everyone involved in this. Thank you, Antar and Angela.
So I'm happy to share. So a lot of what I do has to do with documenting our history here. So the town that I am from, all of our families have been together since the late 1860s, since right after emancipation. One of the things that our elders didn't realize was that a lot of our families have been together since at least the 1830s on plantations or in other parts of the state. And we migrated to our town together, kind of in pods. And so just even teasing through that research, even being able to find that out, people like my grandfather, who turns 90 in July, were like, what do you mean? Like they know it back to our town, but not before then. And I would say, as far as what they say, they try to get me to say everything. It's probably the best way to put it. So we have a lot of elders who are still of sound mind, able to, articulate thoughts, memories, and everything. But when anyone asks them to do anything, they're like, well, Briayna can do it. She's got everything. She's got it all together. She can do it. And I push back on them. I'm like, if they can hear it from you in first person, direct from the source, like, you know, when you are gone, I will happily say it more frequently and show up to any and everything and say it all. But y'all can also do it while you can, you know, while you're here. That, and I would say we have a de facto historian for the city of Annapolis, like city proper, but not so much for our county, which our area was a part of the county before it became a part of the city. So a lot of our history is with the county, and I kind of fill that gap. So whenever anyone asks anything about surrounding areas or, you know, linking other parts of the county to Annapolis, is when people just pass out my contact information like church candy. And so whenever there's meetings or, you know, testimony for a bill in the legislature or connecting with a politician about something else, grants, what have you, they just throw my name out there. And I just oblige and take the calling and do it. And I think the other big thing that has them excited, that I've had on pause for a little bit, was and I've gotten back into working on the book. So I did a lot of oral histories throughout the pandemic, sitting with our elders, and even some folks like, I would say, so from the GI generation, who the oldest person I interviewed just passed the other day, she was 102, to the youngest person I interviewed was 53 at the time I interviewed him. And so really compiling all of their memories, experiences, ancestors, and research together has really made them really excited. It's made more people talk more to their kids, their grandchildren, great nieces, what have you, about some of their memories that they hadn't really shared before. So it's excited and invigorated them to do more, and to tell other people about what I am doing and have going on, so that then I can also do more than I already do.
I would add to that. I mean, just listening to Bree talk about her community and the fact that she is writing a book on Black history of Annapolis, all these things. When I met Bree, she was working 3 jobs, some of them minimum wage. She was drowning in student debt. And we began to engage in reparative justice. I mean, truly, you know, and that involved moving around some of her debt, helping to pay down her student debt and bring other people in. I mean, it takes a community, right? And arranging through all kinds of interesting mechanisms that even I didn't even know existed, but my network helped me put together a plan where she could actually purchase a home. To today, so just adding some gasoline in her tank, so to speak, Bree's like a rocket taking off. And for those white people who say, why would you engage in direct repair? It only helps one person. I say, no, it helps entire communities for generations. Bree is half my age. Imagine what she will do in a lifetime of this work. You know, Bree's working for the State Department. She is moving into more historic work, also working for a local museum. I mean, there's no end to what she can accomplish. And all I'm doing is sharing agency, time, and resources. And I'm only one person. And so I tell white people, especially congregations, imagine the effect that your entire congregation, if I can do this and I'm one person, what can your entire congregation accomplish? What could a city accomplish? And we see these cities around the country starting down this path, and magic is happening. And I say this because it's easy to lose hope right now because there's so much bad news. You know, it's really hard to wake up and just look to see what the latest headline says. And so hope is essential. And so our story, and the beauty of the film Yoruba has created, is that these are all stories of hope, and they can nourish us and keep us on this path. Thank you.
All right. Our next question is from Terry.
Hello. Thank you so much for the contributions that you 3 have made. It was a wonderful video, and I will take this going forward. I believe that from my perspective, I'm a 30-year-old Black American male from St. Louis. And a lot of times what I have issues is not so much convincing my community of the need of reparations, but it is the defining what it is and how it correlates to a policy. Because what will happen, and what I really liked about from your video and from your documentary, was this declension of what is and is not reparations. The leader from the Black Farmer Organization, he said it quite plainly. He said, people are uncomfortable, call it something else, but you still get the land, the money, the agreement. So my question is, and I guess this is a twofold question, how is it best for me to communicate to Black millennials, Black Gen Xers, and non-Black people that this particular policy that we just pass either locally, statewide, or federal is reparative in nature? Right. And then second, what is a 2-sentence, 3-sentence way for me to describe reparations to someone new? Like, give me like a spiel. What's my little stick point? And I'll end with that.
Well, one of the things that I have been saying, because I've been thinking about this as well, we actually didn't use it in the film, but Sean Rochester, who goes through some of that economic stuff that we were just talking about, the GI Bill, et cetera, says, if we're not dealing with it, if we're not talking in the billions of dollars, then we're really not talking about reparations, right? Like, I think we have to, fundamentally understand that the repair and the injustice is, goes into the billions of dollars and that's just a fact. When we look at, what labor, labor that was not paid for during slavery and subsequently Jim Crow and all of the things that, policy that kept us from that wealth. So given that, I say, and you kind of just said it in your question, I say that this kind of work, anything else that's not on a federal level, that's, personal, that's state, is reparative work. Exactly what you just said. It's reparative work. I think Lottie just really described how the work that she's doing with Briayna is reparative and how it tumbles, it like seventh generation, how it goes out and out and out and out. And so I think of it as reparative work. Reparations is, okay, wait, no, I can't define it. I'm going to have to write it and try to define it. But reparations, I think, it has to come from a federal, a federal place, and it needs to be a lot of money. But there's reparative work that we can do as we still push for reparations on a federal and a global level. I mean, I keep going back to this. This is a global issue.
Yes.
I would just add, we to reiterate, we reparations, it's capital R, is no less than a national program of repair. And the current estimate is a minimum of $14 trillion. $14 trillion. So there's no way I can't make a dent as a single person, but I can engage in direct repair. And what the other important part of getting communities involved in local repair is, in Evanston, as an example, and as you may know, Evanston is a city that has basically harnessed marijuana tax to fund housing repair in Evanston. Now, obviously, that's not a full program of repair. It's a gesture. But they also got their faith communities involved. They got philanthropy involved, and they engaged in a lot of education. The result is 70% in a recent survey of people, and that includes white people, say, yes, we approve of reparations. We see how this can work to heal in our community, and we approve of the idea on a national basis. So if you get education involved, if you get community education happening, faith communities, everyone working together, you can see that you can actually build toward the movement for full repair on a national basis.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Caitlin. Caitlin?
Hi, everyone. First of all, I wanted to say on behalf of the Global Progressive Caucus Steering Committee that we are really honored to co-sponsor this event. Yoruba, it's amazing to have you here with us and to be able to really benefit from this incredible documentary that you've created. And Briayna and Lottie, it is always such a pleasure to see you both. And we're really, really grateful for the incredible resources you provide to all of us to facilitate our learning. And I also want to thank Grace for being with us and sharing her wisdom as we gather on this really important occasion, the Day of Remembrance. But yeah, my question is, we saw in this film clips featuring Republican lawmakers, Mitch McConnell and others, who kind of expressed this fear around reparations, whitelash, if you will. But we also know that this kind of attitude is held by many Democratic lawmakers as well, and also many just well-meaning white people who might believe that they support racial and reparative justice until they begin to feel that they may lose something, and then this kind of fear response gets triggered. And often in the reparations movement, we see advocates and experts really trying to communicate to the wider American public that while reparations is first and foremost a debt that is owed to Black Americans, it actually will also benefit everyone. There are many studies and statistics that show that repairing these impacts of past and present harms would actually have economic benefits for communities as a whole. But it's also more than that, I think. And what's, I think, like so kind of really struck me while watching the film is just seeing again this relationship between you, Lottie, and Briayna. And it's just so, I thought so poignant to see your journeys as individuals and together. Just, yeah, shows that this kind of like emotional and psychological healing that reparations can bring for all of us involved in this history. We're all involved. We're all, you know, directly, you know, this has a direct meaning for all of us. And I'm wondering if you can maybe share with us what you imagine it will be like for us kind of as a society, how we interact with each other in community, at a broader level, once we do engage in reparative justice, you know, at an institutional level, at the national level. Like, how do you think kind of like what you've experienced at an interpersonal level could, you know.
Sure. Well, here at the top to these.
I hope that made sense, my question. I don't know. I feel like I'm just kind of talking off the cuff, but I hope you understood my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, thank you for your kind words too. You know, for me as a storyteller, I really think storytelling can be such a big part of this, right? Because it moves people in a way that, you know, that nothing else does. It gives us empathy, it gives us insight, it makes us feel, and it can make us understand or help us to understand. So I think storytelling and education are a really big part of this process. And just as you were talking, you know, I was thinking, like, imagine how we do spiral this out into the country. I mean, it's kind of like you have to ignore the politics, right? You just ignore the politics of it and reach into communities. I mean, I'm really hoping, we also are planning a robust impact campaign with this film, and really bringing it into communities that, you know, that may not have been activated before. You know, I think that this film has a special place where it can talk to white people, and to white people who, you know, may be skeptical or may not understand. And I want to bring this film there. You know, I want to get into the Rotary clubs and maybe even the Daughters of the American Revolution clubs, you know, and start that conversation. And I think, and there are also other films like Lottie mentioned the the Evanston film. Evanston was going on Evanston. There's a film, The Big Payback. We know of other folks making reparations films. So this is it's the more that comes out, the better. I also go back to, well, I never thought I'd see a Black president in my time. And then suddenly we had one. Who knew that marriage equality, this is another film, I made a film about this, but who knew that marriage equality would become the law of the land? It seemed when it first started, people first started talking about it, in the early 2000s, it seemed like this is never going to become the law of the land. So things can happen. And we know, obviously, it's been a long, long, long time. That's why it's so important to put the work of Callie House in the film and other people who've been advocating for reparations since slavery ended. This is not a new push, but if you don't have hope, what do you have? You don't have anything. Sorry, I probably didn't answer your question either, but
that's great. I would just add a couple things. One, I love talking to white conservative folks, and I find that I've developed a diabolical method of getting to people where they can't really argue with what I have to say, because there's some easy answers. And also, I want to let everybody know, on reparationsforslavery.com, we have a great FAQ area where any kind of question you may get asked, we got an answer for that. And every once in a while I'll update it, so I'm kind of overdue, but look on the FAQ and you can get an idea of how would you respond to Mitch McConnell or Tommy Tuberville or any of those people. We've got good responses there. But I always go back, come back to your area of expertise. I was kind of a numbers person before I retired. And so what I love to trot out is, racism affects our GDP. If you are a happy capitalist type, if that's your thing, every human per capita, we're losing $2,500 per person per year based on racism. When you see people like John Boyd Jr., the farmer, unable to get a farm loan. These aren't all your competitors. These are your colleagues who you might be doing business with across the country. These may be innovators, et cetera. Why are we shooting ourselves? My joke is we're shooting ourselves in the boot. Pull yourself up there, but don't shoot yourself in the boot. So the Kellogg Foundation, Citigroup, all of our major Brookings Institution, all of our major think tanks have all come out in the last 5 years with these economic studies proving why we need to engage in repair. And some of them even use the word reparations, because that's exactly what that would do. That would repair past damage and set us up to move forward. So, and somebody else had asked you about, do I get pushback from my family? The answer is no, I don't, because of the way I'm able to state why I'm doing this work. I can point to the history of our family. I can explain exactly how our family made its money, what the impact has been on African Americans, and why this debt is owed, and why I choose to engage in direct repair. I don't get any arguments.
That's great.
Got the receipts.
Receipts.
Yeah, literally. You've got the receipts. Okay, our next question is from Carl. Carl?
Okay, hello, ladies. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So, first of all, I love the film. I love the documentary, and you've definitely sprung up my hope. And I'm a kid from the 60s, 70s, so I remember, Afro-American, when, we had to demonstrate for gay rights, for abortion back then, also for women's rights, and for Black history. So we have come, from my point, a long way in my time. And there is still hope, as I see, and with the document that you've just produced, wonderfully, I'm going to put it out to everybody. So market it. It's just wonderfully done. Normally, I try to not see too many documentaries because it always leaves me feeling sad in a way, because then it's like, well, what are we going to do? What's the end result? But I think you put it together so well. Now everybody knows what kind of like we can do to add on and to get, I like this word repair, back to the people that deserve to have it in the world, and it is a global thing, because when we had the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, it was globally and all those things. So the world has taken charge, and we're a much more closer world today. So my question to you is also, I'm a politician, so I can I'm pushing reparations since I've been a politician. But give us a path of starting just from our community ourselves, because I have a family that has a very interesting history also. And I think I can indulge and go in deep and find other things further for the family. And I try to go through ancestry, but what you're showing me, I should go much, much more deeper and go to each one of those towns where the family comes from and talk to the community to really get the information that I need on my family and on the properties and all that. So how did you start? You went through the community, correct? If I understood that right. You started with this, like the city or the town.
Who are you talking to? Who directing that question?
Well,
Briayna?
Briayna, yeah.
Yeah. Is Briayna still there? I thought she was driving.
I am. I've got you propped up. I am, I guess, somewhat of an anomaly where I live where my ancestors have been for the last 200 years. And I grew up with our family and community historian. So, and Maryland is a bit of a unique state as far as its history with its Black population, and the more of a focus on urban enslavement being the experience here outside of, well, in conjunction with tobacco plantations. I look for information any and everywhere, because if I think it exists, I'm going to search high and low for it. That's just my personality. But I would say it's extra important to get as local as possible when you're Black, and because as we hit that wall. I know it's mentioned in the documentary of hitting that wall. The wall is at different parts for us. For me, it's at 1810 instead of 1870. But being able to look into towns, even if they don't have the same name anymore, regions, that's where I found a lot more newspaper clippings. That's where a lot of the genealogical society libraries are, things of that nature outside of, I definitely absolutely got my start on Ancestry. And Family Search is a free site, but it is a lot more convoluted, in my opinion, than Ancestry. But a lot of people have more luck on there, and I've had some luck on there as well, finding different pieces that I haven't been able to find on Ancestry. But for me, I've made a couple of trips, and I have a few more to make to other parts of Maryland. If for nothing else, to be on the land that previous generations of my family have been on, that also brings something different when you're searching for information, even if you're back on your computer. But the more localized, the better, and the more important for us, because a lot of our information isn't always, the particulars aren't always digitized, aren't always in large repositories. They're at, our home church has a lot of people's birth records and marriage records, like their original ones.
Gotcha.
And so it's churches, it's genealogical libraries. A lot of times that people don't realize that it was the county entities that held a lot of the documents, not so much the state. So even just the county courthouses, wills, ours is called Orphans Court, but the ones that hold stuff for wills and probates. And so a lot of times you have to go local to get more of those particulars. And sometimes that gets highlighted in shows like Finding Your Roots or Genealogy Roadshow. But they're the pieces that I would say us in particular, as Black people, don't necessarily think of. We think of the big places you can look, and then that is a lot of times is it, until someone mentions, oh, there's this that exists, and there's this over here. And then we go look and maybe find some additional, if not documents, additional context that helps us piece things together.
Well, thank you. That helps me a lot. And I didn't really think about the churches, but it really is, because one of the towns that my family comes from, there's a church and there's the cemetery, and a lot of my great-greats were preachers, and they're all buried at that same church. So that'll be a way that I'll start from that end. And on the other end, I do have some family that had land that they got land back then in 18 something. And so it'll be interesting to see whether they got that through the 10 mules and the whatever, 10 acres and a mule or whatever. But
yeah,
doing great.
I spent a lot of time in cemeteries. I am that random young person that is regularly asked. I am that person. People, I'm sure, think it's strange, but I don't care. Just going through, just because you mentioned it, and I think it's one of the ways that people don't realize is how I piece some of my stuff together. So going through cemeteries is how I found out, you know, a couple of our Black migration families, how we were cousins. So my grandfather grew up hearing, you know, oh, well, they're our cousin. And, you know, they moved here, their dad moved here with us. And so, you know, they're our cousin. I'm sitting here like, how? Where? Surnames, going through stuff. And it took going to a cemetery where my grandfather's great-grandparents are buried and looking at the grid of this cemetery and piecing together where people were, cross-checking with the census to go, oh, okay, so sisters married into these other families. So then being able to tease it out there. No one in our community, let alone, you know, my direct family members, could tease out as to how or why. And the cemetery was literally the factor that made that.
Well, thank you. I'm going to retire soon, I guess sometime this year or next year. And so now I have my new project. So thank you very much.
I would also suggest we have a guide to reparative genealogy on our portal. So check it out. It's written for both Black families and white families together to begin doing the research. And so in particular, we recommend our friend, colleague, and mentor, Sharon Morgan, who has created Our Black Ancestry. And there's a Facebook page with 35,000 people on it, both Black and white, all looking to find out this history and engage in repair in one way or another. So those tools are all listed on our website. And so you've got plenty of materials to look at.
Okay.
I'm going to have to jump in a couple minutes too.
Yeah, I just was about to say, we have 2 more people with questions. You guys have been so generous with your time. Leora, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'll be quick. I had so many thoughts watching the documentary, so many thoughts listening to you all speak. I have like a notepad full of things. So first of all, I just want to say, I really hope that all 3 of you have, time for rest and for self-care, especially Yoruba and Briayna, because this work is emotional work and it's difficult. It's emotional labor. And my question was kind of sort of already touched on, but I wonder if this idea of linking reparations so closely to only slavery gives politicians an easy out. Yeah. To kind of push back with the saying of, oh, well, this was over 150 years ago with people who are no longer alive. So therefore, we have no responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just one quick thing about the self-care. I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but it's actually true. Part of what motivates me to do the work that I do is anger. And this is a way. And of course, I, come at it with love and understanding and all of that, but anger and at the injustice. Many of my films are about that. So for me, doing this work is part of the healing process of telling truths, having voices in media that we don't hear from. And that's why I started, got into documentary film, telling our stories, telling stories from the margins, as I say. And looking for following, looking for hope in these stories as well, and resilience, and which I think all of what you see in the film. So I just wanted to say that. And then in terms of linking it too close to slavery, yes, absolutely. That's why we thought it was so important to go through, like with our, charts in hand of like, this is, the GI Bill, the farm agency, all of the, and we didn't even touch on, there's still so much that we didn't touch on. Education, redlining. These are all the ways in which Black people structural, they want to call it, what do they want to call it? Critical race theory? Yeah, damn it. That is, this critical race theory is looking at the structures that were, implemented that were based on racism. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So what do they are, it's just a fact. You just look at, these people are trying to argue against facts. And all of it from slavery, up until today.
Yeah. I would add, so on reparations for slavery, we look at the through lines of history from slavery through Jim Crow, and we look at, we have a whole program we call Modern Vectors of Economic Racism, modern. So once you get past slavery and Jim Crow, then what's happening in education, employment, land, housing, faith communities. Name a category, taxation. We have 14 categories that we look at. I'm about to add a 15th. I haven't finished taxation yet, but it's coming. That you can see how do these things express themselves today, up to yesterday. And then what are the solutions looking at? We have modern vectors of economic liberation also, because we want to start looking at the healing part, because just focusing on oppression is oppressive. It's really deeply wounding to everybody. And like Yoruba, I just want to say, my goal as a white person, as a white reparationist, is to metabolize any shame and guilt I feel about this history into reparative action. So that works on both sides of the fence. Metabolizing harm, we have to metabolize it. And being part of this film project, which I still can't even believe how beautiful the film is. Every time I watch it, it takes my breath away. And what also takes my breath away is the response we're getting, and that people can actually see the path of healing emanating literally from the film and from communities watching the film. People stand up and say, "Oh my God, I just had an idea what to do," or I'm going to get on that genealogy research, or, "Oh, who needs to do that? I know exactly what to do, and here's some people I can work with." All these things are just critical, but that's what the healing path is metabolizing all of these harms, and creating the path for the healing path forward.
I'm sorry, I have to jump on another call, but thank you guys so much for watching. Spread the word. It's great to see you guys on Zoom. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a beautiful film.
Thank you, Angela. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, well, we have one last question. If you guys can hang out for one more minute. Georg, you had a question? Oh.
Georg is my husband. I'm Dawn Earhart, an Ohio voter living in Germany. Thank you so much for the film. It was wonderful. And Lada and Briayna, the work you do is fantastic. I'm just learning about this issue at all. I'm very, very new. I was wondering, especially Lada, if anybody has come to you, a white person, saying, "I know about this past, of a grandfather or grandmother, or whatever, something that was not something about my family history that I'm not proud of," and that they don't have very much money or computer skills. What are some anecdotes? What are some stories of how people have contributed and help, gotten their little bit of healing or contributed to this whole cause? Do you have any stories like that?
We'll be here overnight. We got a lot of stories.
Yeah.
Do you want to start
there's
with one?
one I want to share, a recent one, especially that speaks to the lack of, or like kind of lesser monetary wealth. One of the things I feel like that I end up doing more of it frequently, I guess just because of the work I do around here. And that Lottie and I both talk a lot about is repatriating documents. So in particular, the reparative genealogy piece of what we speak to is, when you come across that information, those firsthand documents, learning how to properly save them, digitize them, transcribe them, putting them out into the internet so that they can be found, disseminating them to, local churches, genealogical societies, all of those places where people may or could look that are more publicly accessible. is important. I mean, one of the women that did that was a part of our series a couple of years ago, who lives in New England now. For her, it was her grandfather was one of the, I think he's explicitly talked about in The Color of Law, but also in a couple of other books. He was one of the main architects of redlining in Baltimore. So her big thing has been going through their family estates, going through family estates. One of them was literally one of the plantations they owned. And they still had in one of her ancestors' libraries, his home office, were multiple documents going back to the 1840s, perfectly preserved, folded up in drawers. And so learning what to do with those, naming Black folks by name, a letter written to a sheriff who had captured one of their runaways, and he was demanding him to bring them back. Those kinds of documents where she had no idea they existed. Her cousins who steward the homes and own the homes now had no clue because they had never gone through the offices or any of the drawers or anything. And while she does do some things in this area with her monetary wealth, that's been one of the bigger things she has done, because she's also been able to trace forward, having and encountering those documents and preserving them. She's been able to trace forward to descendants and literally give them to them. So then, because some of the documents, there was two of them, the letter was written by a woman's third great grandmother. And it teases out how she moved into the part of DC that she moved to and things like that. And so being able to get those extra details essentially direct from the source, all because a white person thought to look through what they had. And so I would say that is a big part of it too, of the stories that we get back from folks where, I bothered to ask the question, I bothered to take a look, and I came across this mountain of stuff. One of my friend's partners was the same way. He moved to the East Coast. We realized, let me spend some more time with my grandmother. His grandmother had 3 file cabinets back to the 1810s of family documents. Wow. And no one had ever bothered to, and she literally, that was her answer, where he was like, you had all this stuff up here? She was like, yeah, no one ever bothered to ask me what was in there. And so she never thought to share or talk about it. So that, I would say those are a couple of the highlights I usually share with people about what comes out of this and what the options are.
I would just add, individuals may not have financial resources, but everybody has some sort of time. Even if you don't have much time, you've got agency, you've got connections and community, and somebody out there may need those connections. You never know. Like, for instance, I just connected, we were in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Springfield College there, giving a screening and panel discussion. And one of the other panelists that was with Bree and me is a woman who teaches at Amherst, Black Studies, and also she's very involved in reproductive justice. Well, a young student, medical student that I work with, she's looking to do more public speaking on her racial equity work, a young doctor in her first year of residency. And so I connected up her, and she'll be able to speak with the student. So it's being able to leverage whatever it is you've got in whatever way you can. So we have a lot of ideas on our website. And in fact, we're going to start collecting ideas from other people, because we get letters all the time, especially from elders. I got a letter just last week from somebody saying, I want to redo my estate plan after seeing your film and really doing some very heavy duty thinking about this. I want to leave my assets in a reparative way. How do I do that? We get a lot of people having these kinds of conversations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring Antar in for him to close out.
All righty. Thank you. Can you guys see me? Because yes. All right, excellent. Thank you. So I'm just setting up myself here. I'm sorry. Okay, so before I close out, I just want to offer one of our co-sponsors, the Progressive Caucus. Now, that's going to be either Caitlin or Bruce. If you guys have any announcements at all, please share with us.
That's me. Sorry, we're right next to each other. That is me, and I didn't realize that I was going to be graciously offered space. But I would just say then, you know, I just want to thank everyone again so much for this really powerful, moving, impactful, I think, you know, time that we've spent together, especially y'all, Briayna, Lottie, Yoruba, who was with us earlier. I think a lot of us are going to walk away with a lot to think about, and hopefully we can all think about ways we can translate it into action. Supporting the Democrats Abroad Reparations Task Force is a great way that people can give their time. If you have time that you can spare, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm sure Antar and the Reparations Task Force would love to welcome new volunteers. And then for the Progressive Caucus, I'll just say we have our monthly meeting always on the first Saturday of the month. The website link to RSVP is not yet live, but it will be soon. So you can just check back with the Progressive Caucus events page here. And we would love to see you as well, and always are very honored to continue supporting any and all events and initiatives from the Democrats Abroad Reparations Task Force, and also, of course, the Global Black Caucus.
Okay, so I precluded the echo effect. Nice. Okay, so I'm just popping in some links pertaining and germane to the Reparations Task Force. I want to say thank you so much to our esteemed guests. We really benefited from having you guys speak. This is a conversation that needs to happen in Democrats Abroad. And it needs to happen, you know, not just in, you know, the United States, but all around the world. And this is the first step to achieving that. We also would like people to support our work in any way they can. So, you know, we were talking about how people can support if you have, you know, the financial means, or if you have time and capacities. You know, for the Reparations Task Force of Democrats Abroad, we like small dollar donations. So, you know, we don't have to be, you know, big bucks, but anything you can donate can really support our cause and support the work that we do stateside for Black Americans, and also for Black Americans who live outside the country as well. Because just because we leave the geopolitical borders of the United States does not mean the harms don't stay with us, don't remain with us. We need repair as well, and we need to argue for the extension of any kind of state or federal repair to apply to Black Americans overseas. So please use the link to donate. Funds will be set aside for the Global Reparations Task Force to continue helping our global party support pro-reparationist forces from around the world, coordinate our multiracial, multi-generational, and interfaith alliance for justice. Our mission has been to push Biden and the Democratic Party to fulfill their promise to enact a federal reparations commission, and your contributions to the Reparations Task Force donation link help us in securing reparative justice through legislation. Our fight is your fight. Support us today, and thank you.
All right. Thank you, Antar. Thank you, Briayna. Thank you, Lottie. And of course, thanks to Yoruba. Thank everyone for joining us. Please remember to vote. It is actually critical that everyone vote. It's not a joke. Because these people some of them that you've seen in the video, like Mitch McConnell, would like to probably make us slaves again. So don't let them get a control of our government. So everyone, thanks once again, and happy Black History Month, and we'll see y'all in the future. Good night.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antar. Thank you, Angela. And thanks everybody for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.